Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. You want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. All right, John Middlekauff, former NFL scout on the 3 and Out podcast for the Volume. Let's start. Philadelphia plays about as poorly as they can possibly play. This is the team you used to scout for. They have made sort of an art form out of sluggish wins. It's probably why I think I'd make them the favorite to win the Super Bowl this year. I thought they were so, in fact, it was my DraftKings bet of the week. I thought Buffalo and 4.5 was a great bet. Did you have your doubts in this one? Because it was so sloppy early.
Well, I mean, felt like a lock Buffalo win when it was 24-14 and they were in complete control. And then it went touchdown, Josh Allen interception, touchdown, and then they got the lead. And then you just went, well, this is the Philadelphia team we've seen all year. Because I don't think there's any player in the NFL who has looked as poorly in their parts of games and then turned the switch and looked like an MVP again. And maybe it's, Romo, they had talked about that, whatever it is, the deep thigh bruise or the injury that he's dealing with. It's not something that, you got a pain tolerance. Maybe as the game goes on, he gets a little looser because early on in games, there is no elite player who plays as crappy in the first half as Jalen. You look up at his stats early on in the first half, he had under 40 yards passing. And then all of a sudden you look at the end of the game, you're like, I thought the guy was awesome. He's been a crazy roller coaster ride. And it goes back, Josh Allen can't play much better. I mean, John Elway meets Cam Newton today, but the Bills just find ways to lose games this year.
I mean, they had 10 first half penalties. I counted 2 drops. I think, and I'll get into this later. When you watch, I watch what Sean Payton's doing in Denver, and they just don't make many mistakes. I don't think they're gifted. I think they have some really good players. Buffalo, I've compared them to Mike Tyson. They don't, Tyson at the end didn't have a jab, left himself wide open, but he had this vicious power. And so he swung from the heels. It was a little bit like Tiger coming out of his shoes as a golfer. It just made up if the irons were off. And I look at Buffalo and I think, listen, there's not going to be a game this year that Philadelphia probably won't play that poorly for a half. There can be sluggish. And to me, if Buffalo can't win this game, right now, John, Denver is the hottest team in the league. Buffalo's, if the Chargers win tonight, does Buffalo feel like a playoff team to you?
They don't, because they can't win the games that they have to win. And tonight was a great example of their quarterback can't play any better. Their quarterback really this year, besides some of the primetime games, has been good. Statistically, he's top 5 in every metric. Yes. Some would argue he's been a top 2 or 3 quarterback, but today's a great example. Their defense let him down. To me, the final drive that led to the 60-yard field goal and then the final drive that led to the touchdown in overtime, I don't understand why you completely just let them get easy completions when all game long you have been playing normal defense. If they beat you, they beat you. It's a rainstorm. That field is slippery. Okay, if they hit some miraculous play, you tip your hat. But to just play 8, 10, 12 yards off and give them completion after completion after completion with this offense, they're too potent once they get close. You saw on the final touchdown with Jalen Hurts, at any moment he can run it. And obviously they just got in field goal range. And honestly, if it wasn't for a Hall of Fame center making a couple shitty, weird plays, the pre-snap that cost them a couple yards, they would have had a 50-yard field goal, drove the field pretty easily. So, I do not think Buffalo's a playoff team. I'm with you. Denver is playing much better on defense, and there's a belief.
Yes.
I don't see how you lose this game if you're Buffalo and have any belief. I think this. You start looking around, you go, what else can we do?
Yeah, there's also, and I've beat on this now for 2 years, but there's 2 quarterbacks in this league that we feel are being let down by their coaching staff: Buffalo and the Chargers. Defensive head coaches, defensive cultures, and in both they have one great receiver, capable backs, good enough O-lines, nice pass rushers, but we just feel like they're uneven, and the quarterback does all he can do. And I'll go back to saying, and I'll get into this in a bit, what Sean McVay is doing with this rickety, rebuilt, old or too young roster with the Rams, he's manufacturing points. I never feel like the Chargers, despite Kellen Moore, the Chargers or the Bills manufacture stuff. It's just Herbert, go make throws. Keenan Allen, go make catches. Josh Allen, be great. And listen, there's no, again, it's if you're going to lose to anybody at Philadelphia late is about as good a loss as the NFL has. But I also think that there is something to be said about, Buffalo's not Green Bay. You have an owner and free agents would go there. But John, let's be honest about this. I think you have about 4 more years of Josh Allen in his prime because he takes too many shots. And then all of a sudden it's like, it's not the same and his contract's going to get bigger. I just kind of feel like they've blown it. I don't feel like Herbert's blown it yet because they could get the right coach. I don't think Buffalo's ever going to move off Sean McDermott.
Well, to me, if they were to do it and were to get a better coach and upgrade, which is going to be difficult, they would have a chance because the way that guy, when he is on like he was today, you're watching and you go, Mahomes has a better career resume and has more accomplishments, but like that version of Josh Allen, there's nothing quite like that. Right? I mean, that's like peak John Elway meets Cam Newton. Like you said, how long can you play like that? You can't really hit the quarterback as much anymore. But he did have the one play when Reddick got him early in the game. He got slammed like it was 1985.
Yeah.
I just wonder, the NFL football is a team game ultimately. Even if you have Peyton, there's a reason Peyton Manning didn't win as much as Tom Brady. His teams were never as good. Yeah. And I remember hearing stories when I was in the NFL that Tom Condon would get on the phone with Bill Polian, and Bill's like, we're not going to be able to buy any players. And Tom would say more. And Peyton was always paid a premium, and their teams always had major flaws. And listen, Tom Brady looks like he's doing pretty well financially right now. Took a little bit less, and his teams were much more stacked. And that was a huge difference. And honestly, it wasn't until the end when Peyton got to Denver that he probably played on the most complete teams, but he was older. Can you imagine him in his peak and younger days? It would have.
And Elway made him take a bit of a pay cut. Remember, he and Elway had a little bit of a clash because John wanted Peyton to take less.
I just don't think you can play in the NFL like a basketball team where you're like, Giannis, Steph, just carry us. That's not the way it really works over the course of the season, especially when you run into good teams. And let's face it, when you shoot yourself in the foot, like the Bills did early in the season, there's too much to make up for. Now, the AFC, because of the injuries, is still not great, but it's hard to have much. I do think there's an emotional toll that losing in football takes on you, right? It's one thing if you lose, like if the Eagles would have lost this game, they could easily just shake it off. I think the Bills are at the point where that might just be the crushing blow for their season.
Yeah, and I don't want to be too punitive on Buffalo because if Gabe Davis turns the other way, they win the game. I mean, this whole world, you can go to Ohio State, Michigan. You can go to Washington State. These games are decided on inches, not feet, one play here and there. So I thought Buffalo, but it did feel like it's an accumulation of games blown and opportunities not seized. And I think that's going to be the season for Buffalo.
Well, I think, and Romo mentioned this, for the first time this year, they've had a little bit more consistent running game. Cook is, the best running back they've had. Well, if they would have had that look at the Eagles. At any moment, they can just hand it to a guy that their GM traded like 2075 fifth-round pick for, and they can control the ball on the ground, right? Because their quarterback also runs. Yet the Bills finally can run the ball, and it's 2 years too late. Because if you would have put a running game on that team a couple years ago, maybe they're not playing at Kansas City in the second round, and that game's in Buffalo, and they're the number 1 seed. But like you said, there's a window because of the way finances work in the NFL. These contracts are not just equal year to year, right? Look at Deshaun Watson. This year it's $20 million on the cap. Next year it's 63. Like these swings dramatically impact your team. So it sucks if you're a Bills fan because they've been a franchise that was so terrible for so long, and they get this franchise quarterback, and now it feels like their finest moment was the blown 13-second game to the Kansas City Chiefs.
And Philadelphia can certainly win anywhere. They could win at Dallas. They could win at Detroit. They could win at San Francisco. But these wins matter. If you want to be the number 1 seed, also, it's a team that has some age up front. Philadelphia could certainly use a week off. Jalen Hurts is, like Travis Kelce, Jalen Hurts, Jason Kelce. These guys, I don't think they're ever at even 90% at this point. So I think Philadelphia is a team that could use a week off. So this win is not just another W. It goes a long way in the NFC home field advantage race.
Well, if they would have lost this game with the 49ers coming in with a lot of momentum, the extra couple days because they played on Thanksgiving, I would look at the NFC a lot different. honestly, the Eagles, this game on Sunday doesn't like they won the Chiefs game, they won the Bills game, they can lose the Niner game, whatever.
Yep.
But I think the Niners play the Ravens. It's not like the Niners are just going to cruise undefeated, even if they beat the Eagles. So this game, honestly, with Detroit leaking oil, probably borderline solidifies their spot as the number 1 seed, which is huge. We saw it last year. The Niners had to go to Philadelphia. This is not Levi Stadium. I mean, it was rainy, it was cold. Not a soul in that stadium left it. The area embraces the ugliness, and it's just they're now built to play like that too.
Yeah, Philadelphia could rest starters in the final week, and if they got to the Super Bowl, gets 2 weeks for the Super Bowl. So it really feels like a magical year for Philadelphia. If you just keep winning games like this, there's a reason they do it. They're so situationally excellent. But it also, one of the things you worry about with Philadelphia is, Hurts, is Jalen healthy? They could rest starters absolutely in week 17.
Yeah.
As Detroit, as you said, leaks oil. San Francisco's also got some really tough games down the stretch, and also Super Bowl. So like even in like a cosmic way, if you could literally take a wand and go, okay, give Philadelphia a couple of weeks to get rest and healthy. Because I think San Francisco has the best roster. But listen, if you told me San Francisco, Philadelphia today, and it's in Philadelphia, I think it's one of the great games we've seen in recent years, but I'd have to lean Philly. I really would.
You know, I saw your take last week about Jalen's composure and the way he acts in front of a press conference and how impressive he is. Doesn't that carry over to the way he plays?
Yeah.
Good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, he scores a game-winning touchdown. He acts no different than when he's got 20 yards in a first half. Meanwhile, his coach jumping up and down, acting like an idiot. Jalen's the opposite. I mean, let's face it, Sirianni's a little over the top for my liking, but Jalen is actually much more coach-like in his mannerisms and the way he conducts himself as a player. They score touchdowns, unfazed, not celebrating. If you're an Eagle fan, to have that Carson Wentz situation and to pivot to this guy, it's an all-time football heaven throwing you a bone move, because that's a pretty special player.